be people that are being trendsetters on what schools, and not just any schools, but especially rural schools that are in arrangements and settings like Harper in an unincorporated area. What can we do, and what obstacles do we have in front of us? So as the last several weeks have gone by, especially since the Florida shooting, the School Safety Center sent all schools in the state of Texas recommendations on things. Please go ahead and review your current safety plans, your current policies, and look at what you can do currently. And that's what the administrative team and I and the board now are going to be charged with doing. And we have several different topics that we're going to discuss tonight, and things that we have been discussing for the last couple of weeks. And when I got a hold of the board about a week ago to say we really don't need to continue to wait for a monthly meeting to start having these discussions. These are things that are urgent to this community, this state, and this country. And I'm of a believer it's time now to quit talking about things we might do and start doing things and get ahead of the curve on what's important to every single person in this room. There should be not a greater demand and a greater charge that any of us have than protecting our children. And I can assure you, the people who work for this school board, and everybody in this room, I know feels the same way, that we are charged with protecting your children with the same passion and the same desires that you have when they're with you. We're not their parents, but I can assure you that all the people that I know would die for any of them. And we're going to do all we can to make sure we do not sell this community short and become one of those places that, God forbid it happens to, we didn't do everything we could, because we all know realistically that everything that we're looking at is meant to try to prevent these, and these are preventative measures, and bad things can still happen regardless of the things you put in place. We are going to discuss here in the next few minutes the different things that we're currently doing and the things that we want to do in the immediate future and the things that we're going to be looking at as we propose down the line. So with that being said, understand our number one priority is to protect your kids, even above educating them. Because as one of you mentioned a while ago, we cannot educate if we cannot protect. And so with that being said, one of the things that I contacted all of you about and we talked about was starting off with, if you pull the bullet and the talking points, was campus accessibility. And looking at, so we met as an administrative team. I said, where are the holes? Where are we making the mistakes? What do we need to shore up? First and foremost, we needed to make sure that it wasn't as easy for, and I don't want to use parents, any visitor to our school district, within the community or anybody else, to access our campuses. So we started off, if you look at the web page this past Monday, we implemented some procedural things to put in place that basically stops all visitors at the office, and they're not allowed beyond those points without scheduled, approved visitation by the campus administrators. That is not to create a sense of an unwelcoming environment in our schools. It is to protect and making sure that we're looking at all people when they come, including parents, and making sure that the safety comes first. So we've done those things. So people, when they come to school this week, they're having to drop their kids off and go on down the hallway, and everybody goes along their way. We are going to promote the idea of parents still being able to speak with teachers and visit their children on special days, and having grandparents' days, and keeping the community involved, but all within a sense of control, not in a sense of free-for-all where we're wondering, who is this person walking down the hallway? And that needed to change. We've done that immediately. So that's one thing that's already been implemented this week that has had an immediate impact. And so we sent out a phone message, emails, text, web page, notes home to the students to make sure that those folks were aware of those procedural things that we have in place. Several of the next talking points are other things that we are about to do. When I say about to do, the board tonight is going to give me direction on what do we want to do now, what are we all in favor of, and then over the next 2 to 3 board meetings actually decide, are we going to take actions on more extreme measures. But another thing that we're doing, we've had vendors, Mr. Eckert and Mr. Long and I have already met with vendors to provide inset security doors at the 2 main entrances of the campuses. where not the main front door, but inset, where there's gonna be security doors that no one can pass unless we allow them in. We're going to put, bulletproof glass inside those areas of where those people are working, who would be granting those people permission to come in. Those are gonna be things that we're gonna move forward with and try to have all of these things in place, at least by the time the next school year starts. That's our plan. We are looking at reviewing strategies to secure all the external doors in our buildings. We have 3 doors, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have not been able to lock because of flow of traffic for students. And that's gotta change. That's another one of those things that has to change. The dynamics of what creates some of the problem, and we've talked about this, is we have grades pre-K through 12 all right here. We have kids, high school kids that have to get to the elementary kids that have to get to the high school, so we have the dynamics of how do we manage that without literally setting somebody at a door, opening and closing. So, we are going to basically look at, Mr. Eckert's got some things I'm gonna let him show you right now, on, putting, not prison fencing in, but even if it looked like prison fencing and it was perceived that way, security fencing in that is gonna secure the commons core area of student traffic and movement that no one from the outside can enter. People will be able to exit, but they will not be able to enter. And Mr. Eckert's gonna show you guys on the board, there's some certain areas. And I'll explain as well as I can without all of you having visuals for this. What we're looking at doing, for those of you that know the language and the terminology, we're looking at closing the breezeway at the elementary campus. And that is the area between the 2 constructed areas of the elementary building. Closing those in with doors that can be exited because of fire hazards, but no one can come in from the outside. We are looking at building a security height fence, 6, 7 to 8 foot, completely around the elementary playground. Closing that completely in. We're looking at building railing fencing, and these are proposed ideas, again, just talking points, completely up the bus lane over here, all the way from the elementary, comes down the sidewalk, all the way to the high school cafeteria doors. Where basically, once someone is inside that area, they couldn't leave. I mean, no one can get from the outside in. Also then securing where my office is, where the administration building is, the sidewalk on the east side of our building that goes closer to where the 5th grade pickup line is, closing that off. So when you close that off, we can have certain doors then that stay unlocked to control the traffic flow. Because there will be gates that will not allow people to come in. We're gonna propose that we do these things as cosmetically pleasing as we possibly can, but that's not the top priority. The top priority, again, is the safety component of it. So I say that as then another strategy that we can do locally, and what we can do to the physical plant here at the campus to make your children more secure when they're here and give you a better sense of the fact that we're doing all we can to prevent that from happening. So the fencing is the next idea that we've talked about. We have spent a lot of time, Mr. Recker and I especially spent a lot of time trying to figure out where's the problem going to be, where is it going to exist, where are the logistical issues with traffic flow, and basically he came up with the idea that fenced in those areas, and that allows us, because our nurse is at the elementary. We have the band hall that the high school kids have to access, so those components would still be available. So the security doors at the front are the two main concerns, and then us having perimeter secured that nobody from the outside can enter into the areas that would control 90% of the traffic flow. And I say that because these front doors of the high school here, these kids would still have to exit to get to the gyms and get to the athletic facilities. But when they come back in, we will have to man that door to get them in, because those doors will remain locked, because they would not be inside the fenced area. If everybody can follow kind of where I'm talking about, so they wouldn't be inside those areas. So again, that's another strategy. Those are things we can do now, okay? We discussed closing in the breezeway. Another procedural thing that I failed to mention, Mr. Eckert and I, Mr. Long, and the principals and I have talked about this too. We've already received bids from 2 different vendors that we're going to have driver's license ID scanners at the main offices, so when any visitor comes in, they're gonna swipe that ID, and the program that we have is a nationwide program that would identify any sex offender that we would have to be concerned ourselves with, and give us the ability to also build into that database people that we have already had situations with that cannot be on our campus. It would immediately alert us to those things. You come in once, we scan you. We don't have to scan you every time if you're somebody that comes in periodically, but we can still print your pass, and your pass, if something has changed since the last time we scanned you, would still pop up on that database. So it would initially print passes for all of our parents. There's portions of it that are also a student-driven thing from when they leave school with the parents. It prints it out, so we have a copy of who signed them out, who they left with, what time, and it gives us just another component that we can look at that helps provide knowledge and safety to what's going on with your kids when they're entering our building, and any visitor that ever tries to attempt to enter your building. If we had an alert with the systems that we're looking at, it's designed to where if an alert popped up, the administrative team immediately gets notified through text and emails and calls. So then we would then immediately report to the offices and deal with the situation that's at the front office. So that's a part of that component of that communication piece. We have, and so the next component of this, talk about from the drills. We have implemented, with the assistance of the Sheriff's Department over the last 5 to 6 years, a lot of different types of drills that we do throughout the year, from fire drills to lockdown drills to evacuation drills. In the last 2 years now, we have done complete campus evacuations. We have a security plan that has locations of places we will take children if we ever have to leave. Obviously, we don't disclose that because that's a part of trying to be secure. We have those plans in places. We have those facilities already arranged. The Sheriff's Department has worked with us to make sure they're a part of those drills. When we do lockdown drills, they come into the building. They work with us very well in making sure those drills are done the right way, coming in, securing classrooms. We've got another lockdown drill plan. We've got another evacuation drill plan, almost to the point where it gets distracting, but we have to do those things. And so I can assure you, the teachers, Officer Metzger has done a wonderful job of doing safety audits in the classrooms where every teacher knows how they're gonna lock their rooms down, how they're gonna seal their doors, how they're gonna protect their students. All of those things we go through, and we practice those things. We will continue to do those things and continue to look for ways to improve upon the ability to make them even safer. Okay, so those things in itself are things that, again, that we're currently doing, things that we can do right now. All things come with a cost, and that's going to be a factor that will play in. Not that there is an unlimited budget to things, but in the sense of protecting our kids, we will not falter on letting money get in the way. There's nothing that we can replace that, and so we're basically going to look at doing the best for the district, but it's time that we get proactive and not be reactive to what could happen. And that is something that I feel very strongly about, in the sense of what we're doing to protect kids. The next component, several of you brought this up, is talking about what aspect of protecting our kids through security are we going to do. We are in current conversations with the county, with the Sheriff's Department, with the commissioners and the judge, and making proposals to try to secure either through the county Sheriff's Department, and now conversations are going in through the county constable's office that is going to be new to precinct 2 in this area, and look at trying to secure trained police officers, not SROs, but trained police officers, people who are trained to protect, to be in our school at all times. We're going to exhaust all those efforts before we then look at district levels, before we have to determine, are we going to go through school resource officers? Are we going to go through the school marshal program? Are we gonna go through the, concealed, and designating staff? All of those things, I can assure you, are on the table and things that this group and I are gonna discuss, and we're going to not throw out any option when it comes to protecting your kids. We would like for that to be a county or a constable police officer that is assigned to the school district with designated times of the day that they're here, and not be able to be pulled away from the campuses. Those are the two stipulations that we want, because what we're running into currently, and it's not that the sheriff's department has not been providing us with security, they have, but in this day and time, the board and I all feel we have to have someone here when kids are here all the time, 7:40 to 3:40. I have no doubt that our sheriff's department is doing all they can to provide what they can. We need more. We've asked for more. If there are certain stipulations that don't allow for that, we're not gonna quit trying. We're gonna continue to move forward, whether or not it's through the sheriff's department, the constable's office, and I will tell you, I'm not gonna have any kind of hard feelings over whether or not anything happens in those directions. We're gonna ask, and we're gonna move on and continue to foster a positive relationship with our sheriff's department. Because they protect us, and we have to continue to foster that, and that's my goal. But I've also been charged with looking at every single option that we can possibly look at. Money will not be an option when it comes to paying for a salary, either through the sheriff's department or the constable's office. We're gonna do those things. We've discussed that as a board. We've discussed that with those officials. I am not someone who can tell you how to run a sheriff's department or a police department. I strongly feel that a school district, especially a rural school district, should not be in the business of having to operate and run a school-run police department. I do not believe that's what we're trained for. I think the people that are trained for those things should be the ones carrying out those tasks. I know there's restrictions, and I know there's concerns and liabilities, but we're in that phase of those conversations of trying to get those components.
And we are willing to pay for it.
We're willing to
pay for it all.
Right. So, with those things being said, you start looking at, because another purpose in this meeting, well, what do we do next? What do we do? And the do next is now let's start talking about what a lot of you mentioned. That next option is, and we've had those discussions about designating, there's two ways that school districts can do it. You either run through the school marshal program that TASB and TEA have designated, or you have the right to what's called designation of armed school personnel. That is your options that you have. To do so, the board has to change local policy to change the fact that you can or cannot do that. You then design criteria around what that will look like, the type of training that will look like, and who would be qualified and who wouldn't be qualified. Criteria that we would look at. I gave each of you a bullet criteria sheet that I got today from a school district and I'll keep names unknown because the press have been all over them, that they designated this in the last 2 weeks. These are criteria that they have looked at. We will develop those along with communicating with the community. And the purpose of this meeting, when somebody would tell you this is a public hearing, it's not. This is not a public hearing. This is for anybody in the public that wants to hear the conversations that we're having, okay? And the point of this is to start the conversations about what was option one, what's option two, and if those two things don't happen, we're going to have somebody on this campus who can protect your children. I would rather that person not be an SRO who, that'd be great, they're carrying. I believe we need people here who can arrest people. If something's happening, that they can respond, and they are police officers who are trained to do so. SROs, school marshals, there's a difference between their role and responsibility and the roles and responsibility of what can happen with a local sheriff's department or through the constable's office. Several ways that school districts are doing it throughout the state. And dynamics, when you look at rural school districts, unincorporated areas, distances from first responders, all the schools that I'm talking to currently all fit those criteria. And we're at that position now to where we cannot continue to sit back and be a lame duck target. And that's what is happening here and being generated in the idea of what more do we need? What more can we do? And it is not, again, that the sheriff's department has not provided us with some of that. But we have to have more. Because we have 3 campuses, we have 600 kids and 100 staff, 300 to 400 adults who come through our school district every day to pick up kids, over 1,000 people in this end of the county that flow through our school district that we're charged with protecting every second they're on our campuses. And that is what we're charged with. So we are going to continue, along with me having meetings. I've got 2 scheduled meetings, one to talk with our PTO, one to talk with our Chamber of Commerce, to get a task force of community members to give me input and intake. We're going to send out a survey to get information from you. This is your school, your children, your community. We're here charged to do what we as a community and a school board think is best in general for all of us. I do not expect this to necessarily be a decision that is 100% received within the sense of everybody agreeing that staff, teachers, whomever you designate should be put in those positions. God forbid, I don't want them in those positions. But that's still not more important to me than making sure we're doing all we can, even if it means we do that. And so, for those of you who brought up those comments and we've had the discussions, we're going to look at ways, if that's the path we have to go, we're gonna look at ways to make sure we're doing it the best way we can and make it as safe as possible, not just for your children, but for the employees that would be charged with doing it. There would be a lot of information that we couldn't share because of safety on the who those people are. And those things will play themselves out. So with those kinds of those are the pieces, that's the purpose of this meeting. And basically what we're here to discuss is, from a financial standpoint, what we're gonna do to move forward with the physical plant. And then, I do have an additional meeting set and scheduled with county officials, so that is not something that's dead in the water. For whatever you see or hear, there's still open dialogue about what we're trying to accomplish. So that is still in the works. If that, again, doesn't play itself to fruition, we're gonna go down other paths to protect your children, be it with other means. So those are the topics that I wanted us to start having those conversations now and not later, because we need to have some things in place now and not later. And so again, I reference back to it's time for action now and not time for talk, because we do not want to be that community that, not that it wouldn't happen here, but that wasn't prepared to the extent that we should prepare ourselves. And I know how these folks think, and I do know why the majority of you showed up tonight. I promise you I'm gonna seek input, and we're gonna continue to seek advice from several folks in regards to what's gonna be the best way to do this, and to continue to do all we can. So, ideas, suggestions, and I'll kind of turn it over to any of y'all if you want.
And I think one thing you've kind of hit on just a little bit, and I think a lot of y'all too, Chris, is it's not just this is what we're gonna do and fix this. There are lots of pieces, and I think this is a great start, it seemed like, from what we've talked, to at least start getting something going.
Sure.
I had run over to Fredericksburg this morning for a meeting. I came back and saw the deputy car in front of the school. It is amazing how, in my opinion, how that helps. They park one in front of Kiera Linda, I don't know what kind of, where JR lives there or whatever, but I mean, that presence is immediate, I think. And so much is, we appreciate Buddy, Jason, James, Steve, all of you guys, ladies. I mean, we are so indebted to everything y'all do. Let there be no doubt about that, ever. But it takes a village, yeah. We don't have the answer, but we're gonna try to start at least moving forward a little bit more.
Any questions on the designs that Mr. Director put together for you on securing the campus in that way?
I mean, initially that looks excellent, I
Can we
think.
put in locks where if we do have a shutdown on, so we do have free travel through the lockdown?
Yes, yeah, that, in any lockdown, any unlocked door, that's a part of our procedures, they automatically, we have people designated to go to those places and get those doors locked down, so yes, that's a procedural thing that we already have in place.
I don't know if anybody's ever looked at any of the statistics, but I've looked at some of them, my numbers may not be exactly accurate, but they're pretty close, okay? For every minute that a shooting is going on, 4 kids, there's 4 people are gonna get shot. For every 60 seconds, 4 people are gonna get shot. One's gonna die. 1 kid's gonna die for every minute until this person's confronted. If we have a 12-minute react time for a deputy, you're looking at 48 people down and 12 dead. That's the average over all this stuff. This is the reason we're here tonight. This is the reason we're talking about buying security, setting all this stuff up. Anything that we can delay these people on, anything that we can harass them on, or anything else to slow them up, you're saving 4 people a minute from getting shot. I think you can research the statistics and find out I'm pretty close on this right now.
Any other thoughts?
This covers all of our entry points, that aren't currently a locked door, with like the fencing or the barricades. Are there any existing doors, that will have to change as part of this too?
Not that we had 5 doors that we discussed, we had the 2 main entrances, we had, what we call the Barker doors, and the 2 breezeway areas, That's the only, those were the 5 places, so the security doors fix the 2 main entrances, the security fencing fixes what we call the Barker doors, and closing in the breezeway does that. So basically, when they're in the infrastructure of the school, nobody can get in without having to go through a lot of trouble. And on top of the security doors, that we're looking at, that's also additional video, surveillance that goes along with that, that all of us have with us at all times, that we can watch and see, at all times who are at those doors and different things that we have, so we do have the surveillance. Sorry? We don't have a way to lock, we keep it locked here today, but there's nobody in it, and we have a security camera in there as well. But that's most of the time, it's either practices and extracurricular activities, we don't have a way to keep someone out of there outside of telling coaches, if it's an athletic group practice and you're in the gym, the door's locked. You know, in most instances, that's the case.
I'm very much in favor of looking towards the, getting feedback from the staff and the community on the designated carry, specifically the designated carry. I want to continue our talks with the county and get an armed professional, on calls, that'd be great, but there's always gonna be a time where that person is sick or in training. I just think we're too isolated to not have, armed staff throughout our school, even if it's just a couple of people to start out with. 98% of the last mass shootings since 1950, they've occurred in gun-free zones. So these people are cowards, and I would like to have that sign out there. Very much.
Several people saying the same thing about Pike Medina and some of those that have the sign posted out front of the school.
Sandy Hook and Parkland both took place in 6 to 8 minutes. There was no resource officer, there was no police officer who was able to get to those people in time. But who did? It's teachers. They're the ones that, 9 teachers and just two shootings, 9 teachers that had defended their kids. They died defending kids that weren't even theirs with chairs and their bodies. So I'd like to see us move forward with community feedback, and of course, I'd like the staff to be comfortable with that before I.
And within that component, again, we talked about how are we gonna get that feedback. That would be me seeking out, community input from other additional public meetings, developing a committee. My email is accessible from the website, so anybody in here that's willing and wanting to serve on a committee like that to help us gather input on what we would do, and understand that's not just to talk about one of these topics, it's to talk about everything that we're discussing. And the survey that I've tentatively developed and that the administrative team and I are gonna review will probably go out within the week to start gathering that input. Generic 7, 8 questions, answers very specific points about what, as a community member, you would feel most comfortable with when it comes to how we protect ourselves. So we're gonna get that out as much as we possibly can. And then that way, by the time we're coming back to make decisions in March and April, we've got more of an idea to know that we're representing they're representing you as their constituents, and we're representing you as people who are here charged to take care of your kids, and we're doing what, as a community, we think is best, and that's the purpose of why we're here today.
Yeah, I think a lot of our opinions, that even in our discussions over the last couple of years, that we barely touched on, have changed a little bit. Kind of like what Jason's talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't used to kind of agree with what Steve's saying, but I'm kind of getting to the point, maybe that's what it's gonna take. I hate that, but that might be the world we're in right now.
I mean, for a lot of you in here, I look around, I see kids that I graduated. You know, I see kids who've gone to school here. I've been here now for the better part of 2 decades. Yes, a lot has changed. There were things that we weren't worried about in 1999 that we're worried about right now in 2018, obviously. And we've been here that long, along with a lot of this administrative team. We've been here a long time, so no, we're not sitting here with blinders on and thinking this can't happen in Harper. Guys, draw up the perfect target you're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay? We are the perfect target. I mean, that's a part of what we want to prevent, and that's why these are conversations that have to be had regardless of feelings or emotions or anything, because we're charged with that, and your kids are worth it. Our kids are worth it. These teachers are worth it. This is a cause that is worth it, regardless of how difficult the task is in getting there.
And also express a point to the teachers that are not interested in this or in no way, shape or mind required.
This is not a have-to situation.
Have to.
It'll be very
It
select
doesn't
whether,
affect your career one way or the other, if you want to or not,
and not even in a situation where we're sure it's gonna be teachers. It could be any dynamic of people on the staffs, that we look at if we get to that point. And so that's just something to talk about. I will bring to you guys in March, some budget figures to look at so we can move forward on some of the physical things that we want to try to have place before summer starts. And get rolling on it, so there'll be some budget work that we'll discuss in March, and then have, hopefully, some ideas, by the April board meeting of what direction we're gonna go, either with armed security and the possibility of armed staff and the possibility of both. So, those are decisions that we're gonna be making, and we're gonna be
We
looking
have a
at.
board member that's missing tonight, and she's opposed to anyone on the campus carrying guns. Her idea is that, and I can't fault her thoughts, is that teachers are supposed to be there to teach, and some people may not be trained well. I feel like I need, because she's not here, I need to bring up her point here also that we were discussing. And, so it's not a unanimous board decision or anything else. We talk about this stuff, that, she has very excellent points on other things to do that we consider also.
We're very blessed having her with her education, knowledge, and background.
Yes.
Thing is, we're drawing from as many real-life scenarios in other places to learn from them. We're looking at physical things, we're looking at the community approach. And, I think that we are also looking at what happens here on our campus. I mean, we had a real threat here last fall. We learned from it. Those things factor into our discussions and our ideas of where to seek help, and where to seek guidance, and where to seek ideas of what we can do. And I think we're all moving towards that. It's just gonna take,
Our situation was basically identical to what happened, except there was intervention. That was the only difference, huh?
and I mean, I can promise you as a parent and a board member, that incident last fall was extremely scary for me. And I know it was for the community. And before things in Florida happened, before other things elsewhere happened, that was top of our discussions, is what we could learn from it, what we could do different, and how we can keep that from ever happening here. So, I don't know if all the answers are laid out in front of us, but I know we're working towards them.
I will be with staff first, because basically what we're trying to do is get the input first from staff and community. And that's gonna help drive the decisions that this group will make. So feel free to call me, feel free to email me, give me your insight, let me know what you're feeling on these things, because every bit of that information is gonna be valued in the decisions that we're ultimately making, and we'll seek it out as much as we possibly can.
Also inside the school, there is a place for the kids to to report behavior that they consider could be problematic.
That being said, I'll bring, some other, things, some other discussion points from input we have in March. And then move toward, after March, moving toward, some ideas on what we're gonna do in April and May as far as having some things in place by the time school year starts. And then by the time teachers get here in mid-August. So that will be closed, and I'll.
So we will close this meeting and open it up for questions.
Six forty-seven. At this point, again, guys, I will paraphrase, I will answer any question you have to the ability from within legalities and my ability to answer questions. And I say that in all due respect to the opponents, as I know what's on a lot of your minds. And with respect to everybody in the room, we're all working toward the same thing. There's nobody in here that doesn't want to protect kids at all. That's what we want to do. So that being said, we can spend some time here with questions from me. I know Sheriff Mills has indicated that he would answer questions to the best of his ability, and move on from there. So at this point, if somebody wants to ask me some questions, I'd be more glad to answer them. Yes, sir.
I'm just, of course, we all think we all have the vested interest of children in here as well as family members. How many days a week is the, SRO regular, a deputy here, correct? How many days a week is he here?
He's here, he's assigned to us every day. There are times when he cannot be here because he's got other situations, and he's usually here on the average 4 to 6 hours a day.
Okay. Can you answer maybe why he's not here full time? Or?
Yeah. We're happy to. For any of y'all that haven't met me before, my name's Buddy Mills. I've been in Gillespie County since 1992. Prior to becoming the sheriff, I was one of those state game wardens that was assigned here to Gillespie County. When Chris approached me here not too long ago, and I came out here and visited with him about having someone here full-time and entering into a full-time contract to provide just that, someone full-time. If the officer was pulled away, that I would immediately have another officer respond and fill that gap here in the county. Just put it out there real bluntly, how many of y'all know exactly how many officers I have on patrol, on a shift, patrolling the entire county? There's a sergeant right there, that's one of them. How many other ones are patrolling Gillespie County currently right now while we're in this meeting?
3 more?
3. 1,062 square miles. What happened on the contract part of it was, if I was to enter into that contract, I have no other officers to provide to bring up here and fill that vacancy. So therefore, that's why I said I can't enter a contract and provide something that I do not have, which is extra officers. I currently have one shift now that operates on 3. Because I had someone quit about a month ago. To this day, I have 0 applications for another deputy. So I'm already short. The county is short.